The UK is in the grips of an energy crisis that could spell a disaster for HMO and service accommodation investors. The wholesale price of energy had skyrocketed even before the Russian and Ukraine conflict, and now with the war, things are expected to get a whole lot worse. In this video, we want to look at what some of the issues are and what we can do to reduce our costs. Hey, if you're watching my videos for the first time, my name is Saj Hussain, and on this channel I share with you my 15 plus years of property investing experience to ultimately help you get further faster in your own property investing journey. With gas prices, there's been an explosion in wholesale prices. They're probably 5 times what they were about a year ago. In fact, the regulator says this sharp rise is due to record price rises globally of gas. Just in the last 6 months alone, it's quadrupled in prices. Wholesale prices had already rocketed before the Russian-Ukraine conflict, and now this situation is only going to make things a whole lot worse. The increase that you and I are experiencing is down to Ofcom's increase in the cap rate, which is up by 54%. So currently at about £1,900, where previously it was about £1,200 a year each. So if you're on a default tariff where you're paying the standard rate, your prices are being capped in terms of how much they can be increased by, and currently this cap was increased on the 1st of April. As you'd expect, we've been looking into some of our utility costs over the last few months in terms of what we can do to try and alleviate some of this pain that's coming very soon. And we've been looking at switching some of our contracts to other suppliers, and pretty much whatever we look at, whatever we're looking to change to, it's probably coming in at twice what we're paying right now as a minimum. So it's certainly more than the 54% that's been estimated in terms of an increase that we're experiencing. As we run many service accommodation units and also HMO properties, we're paying those utility bills, the gas, electric, water, council tax, TV license, cleaners, gardeners, internet. All these things are included in what the person staying at the property is paying each month. Now there is a contribution towards it. What I mean by that is it's not necessarily that's fixed, so there's an allowance that we allocate towards gas and electric. But if we think about how much that's going to increase, this could be a complete disaster for some people depending on their contracts that they have with their tenants, the wording of those contracts, especially for example rent-to-renters that are working on a fairly tight margin. When they're going to have to absorb this additional increase, it can be quite significant. Let me actually break down the numbers on the board behind me and show you how they look like. Let's use HMOs as an example. So when we charge a tenant a rent, we include a number of things within that, which include gas, electric, water, council tax, TV license, cleaning, gardeners or gardening, and internet as well. All these things are included, and we charge about £85 per tenant extra per month on top of the rent to cover all these costs. So how do we break these down? So if we just move this across here slightly, and if I look at just the primary ones, generally we charge about £20 for gas and £20 for electric per person per rent per room. So what that means is the person on top of their normal rent, they're paying about £20 towards the gas bill at the property. Now we might have 6 tenants in the property, so that would mean you're getting £120 a month towards your gas, and the same thing with the electric as well. Now during the summer months, for example, our gas bill is going to be a lot lower. It's going to be nowhere near that. And during the winter months, it generally tends to be significantly higher than that, but it averages out to about £120. That's from our many years of experience, and that's how we tend to charge it. Now, what we do with the way we set up these tenancies is we don't just do it as a fully inclusive, and I'm going to explain that in a moment, so make sure you watch all the way to the end. Let's suppose over the coming few months, the cost of gas and electricity rises quite significantly, and in fact it doubles, which is kind of what we're expecting. That would mean our costs would now rise by £240 a month. And that's a cost we would have to absorb rather than passing on to somebody else. But when you start adding that up, that's a significant amount of your profit that you're starting to lose each and every month. So what are some of the solutions that we can come up with? One of the first things we should do is review the contracts that we have between ourselves and the occupiers of the properties. Whether you're running HMOs or service accommodation, you need to look at what it is that the arrangement is there. And often it tends to be it's an all-inclusive charge. That means what the tenant or the guest is paying at the property includes everything. But generally, when you look at those things, they tend not to be worded very well. If, for example, let's say you've got an internet package or a phone package with some unlimited use of internet or minutes on your phone package, what you'll find is there's generally a fair usage package. That means it's within reason. It's not completely unlimited. There needs to be some fair usage on how that works. So it's important you think about what those fair usage is. So what we tend to do on our contracts is not just have an all-inclusive package, but say actually this payment is a contribution towards the gas and electricity payment. And so, for example, if there's a shortfall, that then they would need to top it up. That's how we have our contracts currently worded. The other thing you can look to do is maybe increase your rents at the same time. Either move them onto a new contract where they're signing a new agreement with a higher rent, or just issue an increase in terms of rent. Now let's look at this example. Let's say our typical tenant pays about £450 a month as an average rent across the board. There tends to be some a little bit less and some to be significantly higher, but let's say it's an average about 450. And if we increase that by about 10%, so about £45, so you've got 10% increase, get an extra £45, and that would take your rent now to £495. Now that additional £45 there would help cover some of these costs that you've got over here. But 10% increase is quite significant, for example, pushing that onto the tenant. When you look at the tenant situation, or everybody's situation right now, all costs are rising. So they're already going to be under significant pressure right now with increases in various other expenses, their living expenses, as well as this increase as well. But if you're a small operator, for example, running, let's say you're running rent to rent at HMOs, and maybe you're working on a 500 or 600% margin, that's a significant amount of money that you have to absorb. So if you've got this increase here, if you've got this £240 a month, this £240 a month that you're having to pay extra, that is going to be a big portion of your monthly profit. And that's unlikely to be something that you're probably going to be able to absorb and still have a viable business. The other thing you want to do is also review your current rates and see if there's a possibility of maybe switching to somebody else that might be able to give you a better deal. Although we've been looking at this for a little while, we haven't really found it viable to switch to somebody else. We've allowed our current agreements to come out of their contracts, so they're on standard rates, and we're just now waiting for the right supplier to be able to switch across to and sign up to new agreements and then commit to those. They're going to be significantly higher than what they are right now, but it means at least we've got some certainty about what's happening going forward. When we've been speaking to many of the energy brokers that we worked with in the past, or new ones we've been speaking to, many of them said, hey, look, right now, just sit tight on what you've already got, because you've probably got a better deal by not doing anything rather than trying to switch to somebody else, because you're going to end up paying significantly more. Another thing that we've been a fan of for a very long time is to have some kind of monitoring of the heating system within the property. And we use various other monitoring tools as well. Talking specifically about the heating, we would use thermostats that allow us to do remote monitoring of the property in terms of what temperature the property currently is at, what kind of requirements they are on the boiler, i.e. how much heat is being demanded from the boiler and how hard the boiler is working. This helps us really be able to assess how much usage is happening within a property, rather than waiting until we get a bill 3 months down the road that tells us 3 months ago that we had very high usage on a particular property. It just means also we can help educate the tenants about how they manage the property. So for example, if they're feeling really hot, turn down the radiators rather than swinging that window open just to let some more fresh air in. You're wasting gas by the boiler working really hard. A new system that we've just started trialing in properties right now is a more advanced system where we have thermostats that can be individually controlled rather than just a traditional thermostats that just require heat from the boiler. So all the heating needs to be on for the radiators to be turned up or turned down. These are individual thermostats that can call heat from the radiator. So one radiator could be on, all the other radiators could be off. This is fantastic for service accommodation properties and HMOs, we find, particularly if we've got a churn, for example, of tenants in HMOs when a room's empty. Those kind of things, it means it's really easy to manage that, and that can be managed remotely as well via an app. So we'll let you know how we get on with that, but that's something we're testing right now. These kind of tools and technology is so much more readily available now than it was, say, many years ago, and we should be utilizing that to be monitoring what's happening at the property. There are a number of other monitors that we use as well, for example, sound levels in our service accommodation, just so there are no parties are happening, heat sensors in case there's any issue with fires. So there's a number of bits of technology we try and use in our properties to make sure that we can monitor them and run them and manage them in the best way we possibly can. And of course, this way also helps us manage the energy as well. The other thing that kind of goes without say really is that you need to ensure that the property is well insulated from drafts, that you haven't got old rickety windows that are letting loads of cold air in through as well. You've got good loft insulation, just basic things like that just kind of excludes a draft from the house that will mean that you can keep the house much more warmer without spending more money. And if you're in the middle of a refurbishment project right now, think about the EPC rating that you might end up with. You want to end up with an EPC rating of C and above, i.e. ABC, ideally on that property, so that you're future proofing it when it comes to be able to rent that property in the future. Not only will it keep your energy costs down, but it means you're not having to spend more money to try and make it more energy efficient in the future. If you want to learn more about how we manage the costs in our HMOs, the setup costs and the operating costs, then I've got a great video lined up for you. That's just over here. But just before you go and do that, don't forget to click on my face to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you on this video just up here.